you lose sight of everything that made them human. And it's been funny, like, even just as a parent, you start to, you get that view into what those struggles were that they went through. And you're like, okay, I get this now. I may not agree with it, but I get it.
Hey, we are back with another episode of The Day After. In this episode, Ian talks about what his experience was like losing his dad when he was 18 years old, and then just recently losing his mom. I'm not gonna lie, there was something so calming about listening to Ian. So go grab a cup of coffee, tea, or water, sit back, and enjoy. And before I let you go, I wanted to let you know we have some dope merch dropping soon, so be on the lookout. Go follow us on Instagram at The Day After Online, or sign up for our mailing list at thedayafter.com, and you'll be the first to know when it drops. Thanks, everyone. Now, on to the show.
My name's Ian. I've lost both of my parents. I lost my dad when I was just over 18. And that was, a very sudden incident that happened with that. And then lost my mom then just a year and a half ago now. So it's definitely been interesting kind of going through both of those and how the one definitely shaped my experience with the other.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, how old are you now?
33.
One of the things I was just kind of going to call out is, when you were 18, obviously very young and sudden. I don't know if your mom was sudden or expected, but I think you have 2 little ones now at home. Is that right?
Yep, that's correct. Yep, 5 and 2.
So going back to like just losing your dad at such a young age, what do you think was the most difficult part?
I think what it really came down to was just the very sudden nature of it. In that it all happened in the course of 4 hours, if that.
Oh my goodness.
So it was, kind of a regular, ordinary night. We'd all gone to sleep. The next thing that I remember from that day, and again, it's so funny, the things that are just seared into your mind, and it doesn't matter how much time passes, was my mom like screaming for help and like waking up because my dad was lying in bed and was just unresponsive. And, like getting up, like trying to wake him, getting him onto the floor, like calling an ambulance. Like we lived 90 seconds, if that, from the hospital and the ambulance squad. So like it was not a question of anybody getting there quickly. And then, them spending the next, like what felt like hour trying to resuscitate him in the house before taking him to the hospital, and then passing like an hour later. So like all of a sudden you go to sleep one night having a parent and thinking that nothing is wrong. And by that very next morning, this person has passed.
Yeah. How old were you? I think you said, but I missed it.
Yeah. Just over 18.
Oh my gosh. This was like right when you were getting ready to kind of go start your life.
Exactly.
And then this happens.
Was taking a semester off between high school and starting college. And then this happened. So again, it's so interesting how life gets put on hold.
Yeah.
Yeah. But also I think you said you were taking that semester off. It's like almost like a blessing in disguise. Like you must have had extra time, or just, naturally been around him a little bit more in those, what you didn't know would be final, days and months.
Yep, exactly.
What was the initial reaction to it? If you could remember, like going back for like that first, I would say at least a year. I'm sure the shock lasted for quite a while or persists, but what was your initial reaction to it?
I just remember there being so much, honestly, just shock initially. The first couple of days after, just trying to wrap your head around even what had happened. And then that giving way to anger, and then, fear of like, all right, so what happened? is this something that's going to happen to me as well? Like
Mm.
literally not having any answers at that
Yeah.
point. Um, and I mean, it wasn't even until I think it was 2 or 3 months later, by the time the autopsy results were released, that it was, basically an issue with his heart where he had a genetic defect that, a virus had basically exploited, and he had, a cardiac arrest and, yeah, passed painlessly, but passed, in the course of, 3 hours.
Holy shit.
And I remember at the time, like, that was, my mom's biggest concern was like, what do I need to know to actually protect my family and like protect those who are still living? Like,
Hmm.
is this something that we need to get treated or fixed? Like,
Right. And you said you had siblings?
yep. So I was the oldest, and then I had two sisters and a brother, and we ranged in age from 18 down to, I think my youngest sister was 12 at the time.
Wow. Okay. And one night that happened, horrifically, like, terrifying. You come home, like the funeral's over, all those plans, like the house fills up, people leave, the house is quiet again. You walk into your home with your siblings and your mom. How did that affect you and your outlook on what your participation in the family was?
Yeah, it was definitely very weird. You know, the again, since it all happened there, like it was very strange how the house felt like almost like it existed in two states. You had all those memories of what had, happened, growing up, your entire childhood, living in this place. But then also this very clear and very vivid, more recent memory of like, this is then where everything happened too. And this sense of, it starts to almost feel like you're living in a funeral home almost. Like this is where this has all transpired. Um,
Yeah.
and it genuinely took, I feel like, a couple of months for that to really shake out and start to feel like there was not even a normalcy, but more just, I know at least in COVID era, we talk about the new normal. Like it wasn't, the normal that previously was, it's what you are now creating.
I remember after CJ's wife died, we like immediately cleared the house. It was like take the kids out for a few hours and just try to, because we had to spend like a week. Well, was it 5 days?
5 days, yeah.
Yeah. Um, and I don't really remember what the process was after my mom passed, but she passed at home. Granted, it was not in a matter of 4 hours. And it was certainly something that we had expected at that time. But I can't really even imagine what like it would be like for something that's I just so it feels more tragic than what I feel like I endured. I don't know if you feel that same way, CJ, but another guest that we have coming on in a few weeks lost their son very suddenly. A matter of literally hours as well, and she had brought up that question of like, is it harder or worse, like
Yeah.
knowing it's coming than not knowing? And Ugh. I mean, as someone, I feel like as someone that's endured the knowing it's coming, I just can't imagine the suddenness of that.
Yeah.
It's even interesting because I think then on the flip side, looking at, how things went with my mom, it was almost a mix between some level of knowing,
Mm.
but also being very sudden. Um, so in her case, it was an instance where, she had been, not feeling great. So she had gone to the hospital, had gotten checked out, had some minor health stuff going on, nothing super major. And as a result of some of the imaging that they were doing, they discovered that she had, uh, like, there was some questionable stuff in her colon. So, like, they did a
Oh.
whole, battery of tests, come to find out it was stage 4 colon cancer.
Holy shit.
Oh my God.
And, basically being given, I think it was around 2 months to live. So again, like also being very sudden, but knowing that there was at least something of a timetable that you were working inside of. And yeah, it it really does change what that grieving process looks like, because from the moment that you find that out, you're already starting to grieve that person.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, it's definitely something that I know is talked about a lot, like at least specifically like in the widow community. It's like, was it sudden? Did you know? Um, and I think people outside of it look at it and, for me it was a long 5.5 year process. And they just say, oh, well, you're so lucky you got to, spend that time and know that it was coming. But then people who have had it sudden, it's like, oh, well, at least, you didn't have to like worry that it was coming and it just happened. But it's like from the outside, it's like I understand you're trying to lessen the pain that we're in, but sudden or not sudden, there's ramifications for both.
Yeah.
Yes,
And it's still fucking horrible.
it absolutely is.
And I'm not lucky that I got to watch my wife die, because now I'm constantly fearful of all things medical. Like that has left its scar. Like you're not lucky that your dad died and you didn't have to go through that trauma of like, when's he going to die? What's it going to be like? I think we like compare grief so much in society, as opposed to just being like, grief is grief. Like pain is pain.
Absolutely.
And like, we should just like hold that for each other and not compare it, like it's okay.
It fucking sucks either way.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's no good, better, best. Like,
No, it all fucking sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. But like you said, the grief, like you were able to start grieving the death of your mom beforehand. And I would imagine the experience of, okay, so that you said this was like a year and a half ago. So like in your 30s. So you're talking 10 years of grieving your dad and then having that experience under your belt, unfortunately,
right.
and then learning how to grieve your mom. But in those 10 years after you lost your dad, where, societally, you're now supposed to be coming into manhood and you're supposed to be like going out and doing these things, and your father is gone. What was the impact of that on you? And like, when did you ever realize that like, oh, this is affecting me in this kind of way?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it felt pretty instantaneous. All of a sudden, things that he would have taken care of just around the house, were all kind of falling to me. And, again, there had been some level of, showing like, oh, this is how you do that. This is how you do this. But there was a lot of trial and error in that first year. And yeah, I think, there were different friends, dads who all kind of stepped up and definitely helped to kind of fill that void. But it definitely is still a void.
Yeah. My boyfriend lost his dad when he was 7, sorry. And he talks about that all the time. It's just like, I didn't have anyone to teach me how to, fix the toilet. He just like installed the toilet upstairs in our upstairs apartment today. And, like those things are so big, because it really is like, your dad is the one that teaches you that, or there's a figure in your life that teaches you that. And, in this case, would have been his dad. I want to just dive into, like you're the oldest son. You've got 3 younger siblings. I was the second oldest when my mom passed, and 2 younger siblings. Do you feel that you kind of took like a father figure role as you kind of grew up and to them?
I think so. And I think it was definitely a mixture of consciously and unconsciously, trying to be the person to hold things together or to make things okay. And I mean, again, I think in the moment, it's very much a survival mechanism of like, this is
Yeah.
just what you need to do. What I feel like is interesting is over time, as that continues to go on, how that almost starts to form a toxic relationship then with your siblings. And then the comments of, you're not my dad, like, stop trying to be dad. Like, where all of a sudden, like, that starts coming out of nowhere and you're like, where did this come from?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so hard. My dad used to joke that like if he could have given me the keys to the car, he would have. My mom died when I was 9, so obviously I was not driving the vehicle anywhere. But I still feel like sometimes that's it's a role I take kind of like unknowingly um or just feel responsibility for. I guess I would put it that way. Even though I have like a fabulous stepmom that certainly fulfilled that role and then some. But it is an interesting dynamic, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. In that, how did your mom respond to that? Because I definitely felt some of that with one of my kids where they were like trying to fill in the gap when my wife died. But I'm curious, like, how did your mom kind of respond, if she did at all, to seeing you kind of step up to fulfill those needs?
Yeah. I think on some level, there's definitely a just needing someone to help, someone to support. And again, since I was at least that much older and, you know, definitely, young adult, would have been going off to college, like, you can ask more of, that type of an individual. Um, but I think by the same token, too, she was definitely going through her own process, of grief and very much just like it was a daily survival. Like, you got to the end of the day and it was like, hey, I got through another day.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, absolutely zero judgment on this from her, but I don't think she was even noticing those other things that were going on. Because again, she was very much just focused on, one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. What now? Did that change the trajectory of your future, your plans? Like,
Yeah.
what were you took a gap year or a semester,
Yep.
and then presumably you had plans for the future. How did that change?
Yeah. So, I mean, in a sense, some things changed, some didn't. Um, I was already at least on track for, starting at the local community college anyway. It just became a lot more evident that, hey, I'm going to be sticking around here for the near future. And then even after that, you know, going from, a 2 year degree onto a 4 year, at first I was only looking at schools where I could continue to live at home because I was like, this is still where I need to be. This is still very fresh. Like, I physically can't be that far away. And her actually telling me, like, you need to go where you need to go. And like, you need to, you need to take care of yourself. Like, we'll figure it out. And then we compromised and it was like 4 hours away. So I could at least, I could be home, if there was something
Yeah.
that happened, something that came up, I could be there, but I was not that, but there was, again, at least a little bit of separation and a little bit of that, actually starting to form your own identity.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was probably really important.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome that she had the foresight to try to encourage you to kind of go and live your life with that in the grieving process. And um we'll call it early stage grieving, because we know that like it just never ends.
Hmm.
In that early stage grieving where you're trying to figure out which college am I going to go to, like you're really trying to figure out how to move forward, yet you're feeling the weight of that loss and the weight of the responsibility on you, and your mom is struggling, she's just trying to get through it. How did you find ways through that and what did you do that helped you to kind of move through all of that?
Yeah. I think for me, honestly, it was, I mean, definitely, having a job, like it was a part-time job anyway, but just something that kind of got me out of the house, got me, seeing some people, and honestly, just having the ability to process some of those feelings, not in the same space. Because again, I think it's
Yeah.
so easy. You see something, it triggers a memory, it triggers a thought. And
Yeah.
having a little bit of distance just to sit with those feelings, those emotions, and yeah, kind of process them was huge. Like I was really grateful for that. And, actually, like even at the time, being surrounded by people who had gone through similar experiences and them just being like, yeah, this is just kind of a part of the process.
That's good. Yeah, it's interesting. You know, I just want to take a moment. I feel like when you're talking about this, there's just such a sense of groundedness in you. And like as you're speaking about it, as you're speaking about your dad and kind of going through this. And I think that that's really awesome. Like um because I think it's hard to achieve that grounded in that grief. Like I know I kind of escalate and then I come down and then I escalate and then I come down. And I'm like at the point where I'm like really trying to ground myself again. But I just wanted to call that out. Like I feel such a calmness listening to you tell your story. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And I have to say, like, it is definitely something that has taken many years. There was a lot of, crying yourself to sleep at
Yeah.
night,
Yeah.
just anger, frustration, I even just remember like the day of like going outside and just raking leaves because I needed to do something. I needed that outlet.
You chose a good outlet.
Yeah, seriously.
It's just like,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
like that's like exercise, fresh air. Like, look at
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. That was my uncle's idea. He was like, we're getting you out. We're
Yeah. Yeah.
go rake the
Mm.
leaves in the front yard. Cause this was like November. So
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
I like went over to my best friend's house around the corner, like right after she passed, and like ate my favorite dinner that their mom always made. Even though making, she would laugh that I said that because it was like frozen chicken cordon bleu. That's what she would always cook.
That's
And
awesome.
I loved it. And like I was just like, I had to get out and go see friends. But sorry to interrupt. Carry on, please.
With the experience, so you were 18, Ashley was a little bit younger. My kids are a lot younger than that. So at 18 years old, you're starting to form an adult mind. I mean, slowly. I know like it doesn't happen until 25 and later, but
hmm
you have some sense of like there is death and tragedy and difficulties in life. So when you experience that and now you go to a friend's house, you make new friends, you watch TV, you're moving about the world and you see families that have two parents. You hear your friends bitch about their father. You like encounter these things, like I'm assuming, and I'm going to make a big assumption, I'm sure you've encountered that. What are the thoughts and feelings that you have when you hear this stuff? Even now, right? Like how do you react to that? And maybe it's different than when initially.
yeah, I think at least in the moment, you know, definitely the first couple of years after, there's still that shock again, kind of as you're still just processing, yeah, what does this mean for me? And you recognize that loss and that absence. And I think over time, how that shifted is, when I hear people say that, I always, it does catch me because each time I'm like, be grateful that you have this person in your life. Again, nobody's perfect. We're all going to have issues. You're not going to have good boundaries. Like this is life. This is life with other human beings.
Mm.
but you have them. Like, and that is something to really be grateful for and to cherish.
Yeah. Can't stress that enough, honestly. I've I feel like I've said that so many times to other like friends or people, just like, dude, hug your mom. Who
Yep.
cares if she's being a brat? Like, she's here, you know?
You know, that moment, yeah, like when you have, that piece of good news and you want to pick up the phone and share it, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh, wait, I can't.
Right. So like I don't have them to call. I still call my dad first, like with news. And I would like he talked about that in his episode of just like, I wish that we were able to call, or she was able to be here when she calls to tell me these things, or my brother calls to tell him things rather. Um do you think that having kids like started or brought back some grief, or that kind of that experience, because now you're a dad, so tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it was definitely very interesting the second time around because, again, in a less directly impacted way, but having that moment of kind of realizing, like, oh, so this this is kind of what she, at least in part, was going through. How do
Mm.
you talk about death to young kids? Like, how do you walk them through this process of this individual who was a part of their life and isn't? How do you continue to keep those, and again, at young ages, how do you keep those stories alive? How do you keep that person still present? Because, while they may no longer physically be here, like, the impact and the meaning that that person had is something that can't be taken away.
Yeah.
How do you think throughout the past decade and losing both your parents now, what do you think the biggest impact has been of that? The biggest thing you've taken away from it?
I mean, I feel like besides the cliche of, live every moment of life as fully as you can, but I mean, it's hard, you get sucked up in the day to day, and it's hard to live with that level of clarity on and focus on the future. But honestly, I feel like kind of where I've come to after a lot of, you know, reading and journaling and counseling and everything out there, it feels like, is kind of landing on this idea of legacy. And, you know, I feel like, in a sense, some of those greatest tragedies have been the greatest gift because it has allowed me to look at my life and to think about what is the impact that I want to leave. What do I want to feel like I've accomplished in however much time I have, whether that's tomorrow, whether that's 50 years from now or more. And I think when you haven't gone through, you know, a death of someone very close to you like that, you don't have that level of clarity and realization of, again, just how finite life can be.
What is the legacy you want to leave?
I feel like it changes, or at least morphs day to day, but
Of course.
you know,
Absolutely. That's
I do
natural.
feel like it's this idea of, wanting to have, again, pass on some of these things to, my kids. And I think, leaving the world a little bit of a better place for, again, however long I was here. Again, through those stories, those memories, just being, honestly, even just being present in people's lives, through friendships, like through, someone who's going through a hard time, you sit down, you talk, you have a meal together, you cry over something. Like, those are all those things and those pieces that make up life.
Takes me back to my favorite show, A Million Little Things.
you just
I think it's
talked
like
about that
my
one
third
too.
time,
Yeah.
bringing that show up, but it's so true. I wish I could steal that tagline.
It's a hard thing to think about legacy. Um, I've certainly thought about it. I've been thinking about it for a long time. When my wife got sick, I thought about it some more. When she died, I thought about it some even more. Now I have this thing in me that I've been trying to work through, which is I will die young, right? Like I've just so many people have died young around me, and significantly my wife, most significantly. And there's just something in my brain that says, "Oh, so that's just what happens. You live and then you die young." So the pressure that I feel to produce some form of legacy or to leave the earth in a place where I feel like it's better is so high and so enormous that I lose sight of that day to day, right? Like I lose sight of being present with the kids. And it's always been difficult for me to do that anyways, to be present with people because my mind never shuts off ever. So it takes so much energy to sit and be present. But like this just has amplified that. Have you had any fear or struggles with getting into a long-term relationship, you know, being married, having kids or whatever the situation is? Like, do you feel like, man, I can't leave my kids. Like I can't let them experience what I've experienced. Or I don't want my partner to experience what my mom experienced.
Every single goddamn day.
Okay. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and, you talk about that fear of dying young. Like it's, yeah. I feel like, again, when you go through that at a young age, every year you feel like you're counting down, like there's some sort of a clock and it's, a flashing countdown of like, this is what you have left.
Yeah.
And yeah, like even just for myself, like thinking like, well, what if it happens? Yeah. At 46 years old, like, you know, that's not that long. Like, what am I doing in this time? And, when I'm getting distracted, when I'm, you know, doing something else, like, is this really what I want? Um,
Mm.
but yeah, like every day I feel like is that constant battle of like, yeah, how I don't want this to happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I can't make it not happen, but doesn't change that fact.
Yeah. What do you do with those thoughts? What do you do with them when they show up?
He goes and rakes leaves, man.
Yeah. To this
True.
day. Oh shit. There's Ian. He's raking leaves again.
Outside raking leaves again. Know what that means.
Yeah. Just leave him alone. He'll be okay. Give him a couple hours.
Sorry. Ian.
All good. It's interesting because I always feel like those feelings and those thoughts always show up when you're least expecting them.
Yeah.
When you feel like you're at your most vulnerable, something else has happened and it becomes that trigger and you roll into something else. And just kind of honestly just trying to give those feelings at least the time and space to run their course as much as I can. Sometimes that's not doable and just start pushing them down and being like, oh, I don't have the time, the space to deal with this now. And then all of a sudden, after a couple of months, you have another trigger event and everything that you've been ignoring all decides to come out at that moment. So yeah, trying to look for those small releases of pressure along the way as opposed to waiting for those bigger events.
What does giving those thoughts and feelings time and space look like?
I mean, I feel like sometimes it's just like, sometimes it's writing, sometimes it's just, going on a car ride, or again, just kind of being by myself, just talking them out, like then just venting that frustration, that anger, you know, needing to actually just get it out of being inside me. Like I don't I don't really care how that looks. It just needs to,
Yeah.
it can't stay inside any longer.
Yeah, I definitely do that. I just did that Thursday. Had therapy, left therapy, got in the car, turned on music that I knew was going to trigger me
Yep. Yep.
purposely,
Yep.
and I just fucking screamed and cried, and then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna just keep driving. And I don't even know like where I ended up. I was like in the lake or at the lake.
In the lake.
Yeah, I drove into it. I was like, fuck this shit. And I just kept driving around and around and around and just like letting myself do that. Now, do you have daily, or we'll call daily ish, routines or things you do to help you stay, um, I mean, I said grounding before, but like stay in your body, to stay connected to that and to yourself?
I wish I could say that I did. Um, Definitely more aspirational, I feel like. Um, but yeah, I think, it's even just, the ordinary daily things that you do, getting up, you make coffee, you see your kids, like even just those little things that kind of help to keep you present and where you are. Um, and I mean, honestly, it's funny that you bring up music and like how much of a trigger that can be. Like,
Yeah.
I, all of the songs, all the music, what
Mm-hmm.
it's going to trigger, why it's going
Yeah.
to trigger something, like how powerful that can be.
Yeah.
Again, as you just process all of those feelings.
Yeah. Absolutely. I want to hear, if you're open to it, a little bit about your dad. I'd like to hear like what he meant to you, how you remember your childhood with him. Um, when you want to recall him, what are those memories?
Yeah, very much that person who was there, who was present in my life, somebody who was, a hard worker. I mean, he would be leaving for work most mornings by like 6, getting home by like 4 or 5 in the afternoon, anywhere from like an hour and a half commute. But again, like this idea of, those sacrifices that he made of, I don't want to move. I want to stay here, like near family, near friends. I'll figure the commute part of this out. And very much that self sacrificing piece of like, hey, this is what I need to do. And I think, you know, that was definitely something that was passed down to like this idea of like, this is what you do. Like you step up, like you make those sacrifices. And yeah, like, growing up to, somebody who was, there for, your T-ball games, who, would come and cheer you on. Somebody who, you could sit down and talk to. And I feel like this has been kind of the tricky part of the grieving process is it's always so easy to remember the good qualities,
Yeah.
but it's so easy to lose sight of the more negative ones that again just make somebody human. Things like, him having a short temper, or and just, losing it and just like yelling at us. We'd be doing something stupid and, dad would lose it, and like that's what you would hear. Like, or, somebody who rarely actually, apologized for things. It was always like, this is on you, like you're at fault. And the handful of times that actually did happen where he stepped up and took ownership and was like, yes, I'm the one who screwed this up.
Mm.
And I feel like, yeah, it's so easy to almost put this person on this pedestal of perfection and like you start to think like, how am I supposed to be like them?
Mm.
Yeah.
And you lose sight of everything that made them human. Um, and it's been funny, like even just as a parent, you know, you start to you get that view into what those struggles were that they went through, and you're like, okay, I get this now. I may not agree with it, but I get it.
You're like, I know why he had the short temper when he did this.
Right. With four of us,
Yeah.
you know, little sleep, like it all makes sense.
Suddenly, you're understanding.
Yeah. Or I mean, like it's even funny, you know, thinking back as a child, like the stories that my mom would tell about her father who passed when I was like 3, so my maternal grandfather. And that was something that she was always very cognizant of. You know, he had a very troubled life, you know, struggled a lot with addiction, on and off. So, like, the stories that she told, she would tell the good ones and a version, at least, of the not good ones, age appropriate. But at least you felt like there was this balanced view of this individual. Like you could actually relate to them as a human. You know, you could see your own shortcomings, you know, where you struggle with some of those same things. Um, and again, I feel like that's just super important to have that balanced view of someone.
Yeah, it's something that I've thought a lot about. It's kind of difficult for me personally to hear you say that because while it's the reality and it's the truth, I do see how do I want to say it? Like there's this pressure to the pressure of holding somebody's legacy, right? Like we were talking
Mm,
about legacy before. Like if I tell a story or I speak about my wife, she's not here to say, "No, you fucking idiot." Like that's not how it went. It didn't go like that, right? And believe me, she would
Yes,
say
she
that to
would.
me.
yep.
She always called me out. So like I feel like such an enormous pressure to have to like be accurate in what I'm saying and the representation of her and her life and the
Mm,
story in our marriage and with the kids. And you're right, like there is the humanity in all of that. And there were amazing things about her, and there were things that challenged the fuck out of me about her too. But it's so hard because we always look back on history with such fondness.
hmm
And it's really difficult to be like, okay, yeah, there were things that drove me nuts because in my mind, it feels like if I say those things, I'm not acknowledging my grief or somehow it takes away from that pain because it's like, no, 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 I'm not saying that like I didn't love her, but yeah, there was these things that annoyed me. But my mind's like, oh, if you say that, if you say something negative, then you're like saying that you're not in hurt, you're not in pain
Right.
that she left you. Yeah, but you're right. Like we have to see humanity for what it is.
Absolutely. And I mean, that idea also of, you know, the other person isn't there to, yeah, like you said, defend themselves and say, like, no, that's not how it happened. You
Yep.
know, you are left with that very, at times, one sided telling or
Yeah.
view of a particular outcome. Uh, and I do think it's something that almost does get better with time because you at least you start to see some of the more minor imperfections less, and I feel like you're left with more of those character complexities, we'll call them. Um, because again, you know, those are all that's the richness that makes us who we are.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. Was there points in your life or even now where you try to find similarities between yourself and your dad to like create that connection to keep that connection alive that you
Oh, yeah.
like lean into?
Yep. Um, you know, definitely, I think, you know, having at least in part, the choice to have a family, there was a definitely a motivating factor there of, going through that similar type of experience. And yeah, like, definitely the places that you go and visit, anytime I'm in the mountains, I think of him like that's always where he was, the happiest. That's where he wanted to be. Like when I want to feel close, like there's a couple of, spots nearby that, again, you can very much feel that presence there.
Is there one thing that you would want to say about the experience of grief and losing a parent that would be something that you wish people could know that haven't experienced it?
I think, yeah, there's the point around, cherish each of those moments that you have. Enjoy it all. Again, I would even take back at this time, any of those disagreements or times where, something was maybe said, that was hurtful, because at least you have that individual there. And I feel like as well, it's something that I feel like I was really left with from that is wanting to leave more of a record of my own life and my own thoughts, and actually like starting the very long process of like just writing down your own life story. Because I feel like there are just so many gaps and things that I don't know. Like, why was this particular decision made, or that one that feels so enormous that you never had a chance to ask? And I want to pass that along. Like, I don't want there to be all of these gaps.
Yeah, that's awesome. Anything else, Ashley?
No, it's just that wrapped it up very nicely. Referring back to legacy, and it's like you're a marketer, Ian. You know how to tell a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was yeah, I don't know. I definitely feel calmer after.
Ian's gonna have to come on every few months.
Exactly. I'm gonna message you like, dude, I'm having a really bad day. Can you just talk to me? Just tell me about your day. Just read a newspaper to me. I don't care what it is. But we definitely appreciate you coming on. It really means a lot to us.
Absolutely. I know we mentioned this before we started, like the work that you both are doing. I mean, this is so key, so instrumental, because again, I feel like you just don't talk enough about grief. And, when you realize it's a lifelong process,
Yeah.
there's, no point where you feel like you've gotten over it. Like that,
Yeah.
it gets easier, but it doesn't ever go away. And, you still have those times where it catches you off guard. And, actually just having those conversations, talking about those struggles, like
Yeah.
we've done such a poor job as a society of giving each other space for that. You pass somebody and it's like, oh, how are you doing? Fine.
Exactly.
You really aren't fine inside.
Right.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And nobody wants to, well, I wouldn't say nobody, but a lot of people, when they ask that, they don't really want to know.
Right.
Right. Like, you want to know how I'm doing? Okay. Sit down, grab a cup of coffee.
We're going to be here a while.
Yeah.
Yep. I will take you at your word.
Yep. And I think, yeah, surrounding yourself with those people, virtually or in person, that, really do care about you as the individual and who will give you space for that.
Yeah, it's super important.
Yeah. Just knowing that, well, I don't know, just talking about it as someone that, honestly, even my friends were like, you're going to talk about losing your mom on a podcast? And I was like, yeah.
Mhm.
They're like, you
Yep.
like never talk about it. Like, we've been your closest friends for like over a decade. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to do it, man. Like, but even hearing in our first, like, fifth recording this is, I feel like I've reaped the benefits of therapy already. Like
Yeah.
it's been so therapeutic in so many ways. And now, as someone that puts a lot of pressure on herself to just like deliver or succeed, I'm like, fuck, this thing better, this thing better go ahead.
Exactly.
It's like everyone has sent me so
Mhm.
many messages, and I'm just like, oh my God, this can't fail. Like
Yeah.
all these people are relying on me. So fuck.
Yep. No, I've definitely feel that. And you will be in the hot seat one of these episodes.
Ugh.
You're gonna have to tell your full story.
Well, not if I keep getting all the guests I'm getting.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. Mhm. Don't worry. We'll make it happen.
It will come.
Yeah. All right.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, we'll make the people request it. All right, let's do lightning round.
2 questions each. 2 questions each.
Five. It's lightning, like the quick answer. Fine. Start with 2. See, this is why you're unprepared.
No, I'm prepared.
You can't think of more questions. Did you just write them down?
No.
Did I just see you write them down?
No. I'm like, now
Okay.
I'm going to think of 3 more so I have them when you're done.
Okay. All right. You can go first since you don't have any answered. So literally lightning round. First time we've done this. We're just going to have some fun
Sounds good.
after, trying to end after such a heavy topic. So
Ian, does pineapple belong on pizza?
No.
What is your favorite TV show?
How I Met Your Mother.
Ooh, all right.
it's a good one. Yeah.
Do you consider chili a soup?
Ooh, that is a tough one. I would probably say yes.
All right. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
No.
What is your favorite book?
That's a good one.
Also a tough one. I have a lot of favorites, more books than I know even what to do with. I will probably say The Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
I'm a big nerd, so
I love that. If
that fits.
If you're on Goodreads, find me because I've really been digging into books these last 2 years. But those are my 5 questions. So over to you, CJ.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, they were good. I'll give it up. Those were very good. Yeah. Listen, okay. Full transparency. My questions, I asked ChatGTP. So
there
let's
you
see
go.
how
Nice.
ChatGTP does. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
I don't know. I think the conventional, like being able to fly would be really cool. I would be scared shitless because I hate heights, but I think that would be pretty cool.
Okay. What's the last thing you watched on Netflix?
White Lotus.
First season or second season?
Second season.
Yeah, I didn't finish the second season yet. The first season was so good.
It was.
My coworker the other day just told me that I remind her of someone in that show. I'm going to have to find out who it was.
Yeah, ask her because it's 2 different casts, except for what's her name?
Yeah, Jennifer Coolidge.
Yeah, Jennifer Coolidge. She's the only one that's consistent, I think, and her husband.
Let me see. 1 second. Give me 2 seconds.
Okay, you go. I'll keep asking. If you could live anywhere in the world for a year, where would you choose?
Probably have to say New Zealand.
Choice.
Because of Lord of the Rings?
Yes, as well as kind of tropical, but mountainous, more remote, but you're still connected to the world. So it's kind of that perfect mix of a little bit of everything.
Yeah. If you could be any fictional character, what would you be and why? Or who would you be and why?
Fictional character.
I literally always have to be like fact, fiction, nonfiction.
Right.
It's like, why couldn't they just say like true and false? I don't like what complicate
or
things.
you could just learn.
Yeah,
True.
I do. I'm just like, I gotta think about it.
Honestly, that took me definitely a hot second to think back on. I think I would probably be one of the characters in like a childhood book that I remember, which was, I don't know if either of you read My Side of the Mountain.
No.
It was this story about this boy like going off to live in the mountains and kind of like being self-sufficient, kind of doing his own thing. So, and definitely like growing up, that was a lot of, what I wanted to do, or like that idea of like, oh, you can figure it all out on your own. Like, just leave me alone, give me a little space and I can do this.
Nice. Yeah. Little mini Walt Whitman.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. At first, I thought you were going to say Lord of the Flies, and I'm like, oh, good God.
That's kind of weird.
Yeah.
And the last one, let's see, which one do we choose? If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
First person, at least, that comes to mind, because I feel like there's a lot, in having been a history major in college, I could come up with quite a few. I would probably have to say Teddy Roosevelt, because I feel like he would be a very interesting dinner guest, like somebody who lived a very diverse and unique life, who I think, could actually learn quite a bit from. And it would be entertaining. It would not be, an awkward conversation.
Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you for coming on, Ian. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you both so much.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is it for this episode. Thanks. Yeah, appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast.